There is something amazing happening at the Ohio State University. There are people by the hundreds seeking and seeking after Jesus like never before, being baptized and all kinds of things like that. What's happening? We're going to talk to Brandon Edwards about this. He's the director of the Buckeyes for Christ ministry there at the Ohio State University. He has an amazing Bible study that is on YouTube and other platforms as well called The Rabbit Hole. I will link that in the description below, his YouTube channel. He's a father of three. He's a husband. He's from Italy. He went to Freed-Hardeman University, graduated at Harvard, postgraduated at Oxford, and he says all of this is just to open doors for Christ. Really an amazing guy. So blessed to get to talk to him. Let's get into the conversation. Typically, when I see like a college, when I see the college name on trending, I'm like, either a miraculous sports moment has happened or something really terrible has happened. And in this case, it's neither. And I've only seen some videos on X, but I don't really know what's going on over there. What in the world is going on over there?
Sure. So it's a fascinating thing. So I've been the campus minister with the Buckeyes for Christ here on campus at The Ohio State University. And I have to say "the" or I get in trouble. And so, well, for the last almost 3 years. And during the time here, it's a fascinating culture because it's a very secular campus in and of itself. There's nothing inherently about Ohio State that everybody's looking at going, oh, yeah, no, that's a Christian school in any way, shape, or form. But what's interesting is the association with some of our football players directly, who have been very public in their expressions of faith and the rest. And it goes back to even C.J. Stroud before his going in the draft last year, going to the Texans and the rest. And then now you have what kind of came about in this last year is we'd started seeing it at training camp, at the beginning of training camp. I think there was like 27 players that showed up for training camp wearing shirts that said Jesus saves or Jesus won or the rest. And
Wow.
the media was taking photos of this going, we were preparing for the football season. What is this? I mean, we just took all these photos and all these guys seem to be wearing the same brand, the same shirt. What is this that's going on? And then online, there's a player named Cameron Babb, and he was graduated, kind of a horrific story in and of itself when it comes to his career, in that he had 4 ACL tears while as a football player at Ohio State.
Whoa.
Ended up with one catch for one touchdown for 8 yards in his entire career. But during his time, he became a devout believer in Jesus and became very advocate for faith on the team. And we had started hearing and seeing some things on campus about football players baptizing other football players. And there was photos that would show up. And then at the beginning of this semester, out of the blue, we see Emeka Egbuka and a couple of Travion Henderson, a couple of the captains of the Ohio State football team put out on Instagram, said, hey, we're going to do this worship service live, and we're going to tell you about our lives with Jesus and the rest. Come and join us on this night. And that was going to be August 25th. And it was supposed to be out there. And we started seeing it trending on campus of people talking about what is happening. What are all these? I mean, these are the captains of the Ohio State football team inviting people to a worship service in essence. So it's highly unique in that perspective.
Yeah.
And then, and so just a little background story also, the Ohio State Student Fair was supposed to happen on the 18th. It got pushed because of rain. And so they decided to push it to the 25th. And so the student fair brings in 40,000, 45,000 of the students to meet all the clubs on the campus itself. So it's a massive event. It's huge. We as a club gave out over 500 little succulent plants, over 4,000 stickers. We talked to 1,500 students. The crazy part was we got 540 contacts for people who wanted to follow up with the club. And we're a Christian Bible club. Wanted Bible studies and wanted to follow up. And prior to that, it was like 20 was a good year. We got 540.
Whoa.
And I was sitting there going, what is happening right now? Now, we've been praying for this type of thing for a long time.
Yeah.
And because the fair got moved, it got moved on top of when this event with the Ohio State football players was supposed to happen. But they decided to do it anyways. And so they just moved it 2 miles down the road. They had to go to a different location. And even with the move, I was in the process of shutting down our booth and moving the rest when all of a sudden this kicked off. From my understanding, it was between 1,000 and 2,000 students ended up over there. Now, you have to understand this is a It's a non-denominational type gathering
Yeah.
was what was happening. But there was no one church that was responsible for it. There was no
Wow.
preachers, there was no pastors, there was no anything of that. It was the football players. It was
Whoa.
those six guys, in essence, that had decided to put this on. So they were the ones who came up and shared, in essence, from a, we speak Christianese. They shared their testimonies, concepts. They invited people forward, in essence, for prayer, that people would pray for them and the rest. And then they were baptized, from what I'm hearing, for the remission of sins. And so there's this fascinating moment. And of course, being kind of the academic and historian, I'm hearkening back to the movements when people broke away from denominationalism. I'm thinking even back early churches of Christ type thing. Well, what was happening? People were just sharing their faith. They were getting rid of all the extra stuff and the rest and just trying to focus on Jesus.
Yeah.
So over the last couple of years, we've started to see this movement happening on campus. And because football, in a lot of ways, is king here, I mean, it's just, we're ranked number 2 going into the season. There's a lot of high expectations. But it was fascinating to see that their priority was no, no, Jesus, that's what we want. We're kicking off this season with this.
Yeah, I'm absolutely baffled about the idea that like they figured it out, or like in the sense that like I was gonna ask you if like which church, which group, who orchestrated, but it's just the college players. It's
Yes,
just the
they reached
kids.
out to some of the campus ministries and the campus clubs and were like, tell people we're getting together. And that's kind of what happened. So
No
there was a few
way.
churches that shared out. They were like, hey, come and join this. With our students, we told them, I said, we have no idea what's going on, but I'm fascinated to see what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Like, I really want to see what this is. And so we've reached out to them about following up with these individuals that were baptized, these individuals about doing Bible studies, following
Hmm.
up with them, seeing how we might plug them into the campus ministry, whatever it may be. And so we have hopes of being able to come in almost on the back end to say, hey, let us we're here to teach, we're here to encourage, to uplift, and to pray with you guys and spend time with y'all. But there's something happening, and I often tell people, when God is always on the move beyond even what we think and what we assume. I worked in China for a few years back in my right after college, and I remember getting to China. And the first night I went to bed, and I woke up at about 5 o'clock in the morning with someone knocking on my door, and there was a young lady there with a little note in her hands that she handed me, and I looked at it and I went, I don't speak Chinese. I have no idea what this is. But she kind of went like this, and I flipped it over, and it said, "What is God?" And I just remember going, how do we begin to answer that question? And then it kind of hit me, and I gave her a date, and I said, come back, I'll find somebody who can translate. And I went to sleep because something beautiful hit me that before I'd even gotten there, God had already been working on her in her own mind and her own
Yeah.
heart about trying to find. And for whatever reason, she said, foreigner must meet someone who knows about God.
Whoa.
So that's why she kind of started off. Same thing right now here. There seems to be like God is working on people's hearts in ways that I can't comprehend, but we want to be there for it. We want to
Yeah.
be there to help support and to bring them into what we believe to be the one true church. I always tell people I'm unapologetic and unashamed of that I believe that God has given us a specific calling in this world to be light in the darkness. And so that's what we're going to be. I understand all of the, there's always a lot of things you have to unteach and like layers of an onion, unpeel away to get to the kernels of truth within. But I'm more than happy to do that work,
Yeah.
especially if God's already doing what He's doing.
I'm really amazed at the idea of, and this is like what we sometimes talk about in the church, like in theory of, like when you can have people that come to just the conversation about Jesus without all the baggage of the religious world, without all the knowledge of all the sectarianism and all that stuff, and they just are learning about Jesus. They're hearing what some people say Jesus has done for them in their life. It's so much more simple, and I think in that situation, the ground is so much more fertile and easy to work in there because you're not having to knock down a bunch of structures first. You're just dealing with people that go, "I want Jesus, so what's up? What do I do?"
Correct.
That is so cool.
Yes, and it's. I always tell people, my goal is to make things simple. The world is complex enough as it is, and including in faith and the rest, that we have a way of overcomplicating things. Now, there are complex questions, and there is depth to be found. But the reality is to be a follower of Jesus is simple in and of itself.
Hmm.
It's not complex. we make it that way when we try to overdo everything or to one of the things that often gets us into trouble is we go, well, we start asking all the questions. Well, what's their background? What do they know? Where have they been? What do they? Okay, what do they need to know to make the decisions that they've made?
Mm.
That's why I was fascinated by the fact that they were baptizing for the remission of sins. I
Yeah.
went, boy, that's so unusual. And even our school newspaper, and the Lantern, you can almost tell sometimes the people, like the writers, didn't know really what to make of this. In the first article, they said, and they were having a Catholic baptism, and all of the comments were, I don't think you've been around Catholics long enough to know that that's not how they baptize.
Yeah.
That's not a Catholic baptism. And so then they were retracted. Actually, it was a Protestant baptism. And people were like, listen, that's not really a thing either. You need to try to figure
Yeah.
out your terminologies here. And then they said, well, they asked Jesus into their heart, and people went, actually, that's not what happened. But it was like one thing after another, where you see those complexities. You see
Yeah.
all of the verbiage and the terminologies from the religious world that that's all people know.
Yeah.
When in reality, here you have these individuals that were sharing their faith in Jesus, and then people were going and responding to that and saying, I want that too. I want to die to myself through the waters of baptism. And that's what was happening.
Yeah. So the people that are trying to narrate this are like, which box does this belong in? Which
Yes.
category does it belong in? And the people are just trying to follow. They're just trying to find Jesus.
Oh yeah, absolutely. From the Daily Wire to Fox News to I've seen quite a few different articles about it in general. It's fascinating to me how they all keep trying to frame it in some way or another.
Yeah.
And possibly my favorite though has been the Michigan fans trying to frame it. Because there's such a rivalry, and there was I mean I couldn't tell how many people were like, "Look, I'm a Michigan fan, but this is awesome,"
Yeah.
but also, I hope God's not on your side. Like I heard that like over and over again throughout the entire time.
That is
So it's
hilarious.
it's fascinating our religious world when it meets these moments.
Well, can I ask? Let me ask you the last question. I'll ask you is a cultural kind of a question. I have talked with some people about this before. I feel like I'm seeing in all age groups, but especially in young people, come to a recognition like off of the back of like new atheism, like Richard Dawkins type people. Seeing that like the secular, materialistic, atheist kind of a framework for life and the logical conclusions of those things. I feel like they're starting to see that not only is that not true, but it is like objectively bad for their lives. I think that people are recognizing this, whether consciously or subconsciously, and it's at least making more people religious or like cultural Christians is that new term right now. I feel like I see the pendulum swinging a little bit culturally towards like real religion, like away from like the real superficial stuff and to like the real stuff that people want the real thing. But again, I only work off of my sample size in this and I don't have like some kind of statistics. But do you feel like you see that too, or is it like something else?
Oh yeah, no. So when it comes to, for example, just a secular campus that we have 65,000 students
Mm,
that are here. One of the largest campus, if not the largest campus in the United States when it comes to student body and the rest. It's still very secular, but the reality is I think you're spot on. There is a movement of what I would even call rationale of individuals going, no, that's not good for me, or that's not actually helpful for me.
hmm.
And there is this rebellion against this idea that I can do whatever I want.
Yeah.
That instead there are things that might be okay for me to do from a cultural perspective, but they're not good for me to do. And so I think you're spot on when it comes to the concept of kind of cultural Christianity. I would also note that from a Western civilization perspective, our realization that God has actually helped us to arrive at the conclusions we have. I say something, all politics is morality. All politics, you're making moral arguments. You can't drive down the road going 120 without somebody telling you that's wrong.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's how do you know it's wrong? Because you're going to kill someone. Even in our society today, just this morning, I saw an article of one of the Columbus Blue Jackets hockey players and his brother were killed over the weekend in a bike accident in New Jersey. It seems by a drunk driver.
Mm,
Well, you have a lot of players out there who go, well, how do you know that's wrong? In an new atheistic world, there's nothing really you can say that that's wrong. You can't really say, you can say, it's sad, but even that is why is it sad? And so all of these arguments that people have been making for a while, they're empty wells.
mm.
There's no water to be found. And I do think that we have a generation of people that are going into it going, I'm not finding peace here, and I'm not finding joy here, and I'm not finding these things. It's why you see kind of odd breakoffs from this, like trad wives,
Yeah.
traditional wives concept, or even moving away from, brat summer to demure, all of these types of things in general. They're looking for order. They're
Hmm.
looking for um, they're looking for peace, and they're looking for discipline, not control, because they found that control doesn't work. Doing whatever I please ultimately only makes me completely miserable. And the way that I use it from a spiritual terms is we make terrible gods. I mean, we make
Mm.
terrible gods because you don't know I am one. And because you don't know, you don't do all the things that I want. And my entire existence either becomes completely narcissistic, and then I'm miserable, I'm angry, I'm sad all the time. Or I could go, maybe it's not about me. And if it's not about me, that's actually really good news. Because then when everything goes terrible, it's not because everything's out to get me,
Hmm.
but because life has the consequences of sin, of the fall, and the rest, and I get to deal with those, and I know one who can actually provide something beyond where I am in this moment. And so for college students and the rest, that's my constant mantra to them is it's not about you. And that's good news. And it's because God has made a way home for you in spite of the mess, in spite of all these things, that you can find peace and joy through the pain, through the suffering, through the disciplines that you need to build a life that God has in store for you in this world, that God has control over all of that if you just let Him.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. The moment you even get like 1 degree out of like materialism
Mhm.
and naturalism, and you introduce God, instantly it's like the whole world is opened up, and you have all this purpose, and you have the solutions to your problems and the framework for daily living. I mean, it's no wonder that is so appealing to people. When you're talking right now, I feel my heart on fire. How grateful I am just to be a Christian and to have that, and how much I want people to have that. Oh man.
Yeah,
It
absolutely.
it's so amazing to see that. Okay, I'm glad I asked you that because that you gave me a really good perspective. I wasn't fully thinking about it that way, but it just seems so logical that that would be the next step. It's so cool to see what's happening. This stuff seems to be happening more and more. I'm noticing. You're probably noticing, like on major podcasts, they're having like the Connectly, like Cliff and Stuart Connectly on there, like apologetics guys on there that are talking about God. They're having like Bible conversations more and more. Oh man, it seems like such a cool moment that we've got to
Oh yeah.
seize
Look at
on.
Jordan Peterson, and
Yeah,
some of the others that are I've joked, I said Jordan Peterson is so close to coming to that realization of all the things that he's arguing for are found in the order that God provides.
yeah,
You even look at what you said it well, kind of cultural Christians in some ways. Even Richard Dawkins has gotten to a point where he's going, you know what?
yeah,
Maybe I was wrong about this. I think there's actually some values we do need from a
yeah,
cultural perspective. Now, he was speaking about the UK and the
yeah,
rest, but you look at individuals like Elon Musk and the rest who are also arguing for traditional concepts, which goes against this narrative that we see in this world that progress is always change, that progress is always more quote unquote freedom.
hmm,
And I use this analogy at times, and I forget where I got it from. It's not original to me, but if I were to come up to you and say, "Hey, let's play a game," okay, you go first. And we stop, and oftentimes the person goes, I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Well, it's the same thing. We don't think about it, but this idea of pure freedom to decide whatever we want is actually debilitating in the end.
yeah,
When in reality, what we want to know is what are the rules? What are the parameters? What am I supposed to do? How do I get the most out of this life? And there is a beautiful aspect to be found in that type of restraint.
yeah,
That's one of the reasons why I share with God when God says that He is all powerful. It's because there are restraints to who He is. And his restraints are not debilitating to him. It is that we know and can know who he is and those parameters of his love, his goodness, his mercy, his grace, and also his discipline and his desire that none should perish, but that all should have eternal life. Those boundaries are what give us hope. It's not that makes him less of a God
yeah.
concept because he can't do whatever he wants, that there is beautiful things to be found in those types of structures.
Dude, everyone needs to hear that, man. Whew, everybody needs to hear that. Thank you so much again for taking the time Means the world to me. I'll be praying about that, about your ministry there, the Buckeyes for Christ, at the Ohio State.
Yeah, that's right. I appreciate the time. I really do. It's been fantastic. Be praying for us, for the students, and that come across our way, that we may be lights in a dark world.
Amen. If you want access to the full version of that conversation, it is on my Patreon. The link is in the description below. For as little as $5 a month, you can support the channel and help spread the word about all this amazing stuff that's going on. God bless you. I love you. Let me know what you think. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment, though. Give me your thoughts about all this. I'm very curious to hear what you have to say. Take care. Talk to you soon. Goodbye.